right, some travel to share with you. Tomorrow, the Secretary-General will be heading to New Delhi in India, where he's been invited to take part in the Artificial Intelligence Impact Summit. He's scheduled to participate in the summit's opening ceremony, a plenary with heads of states and government, as well as a session on the role of science in international AI governance. The Secretary-General will have bilateral meetings with the President of India, Draupadi Murmu, as well as with the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. He will also meet with leaders attending the summit, tech leaders, and members of the International Scientific Panel on Artificial Intelligence. While in India, the Secretary-General is also scheduled to take part in a roundtable organized by our UN colleagues to discuss renewable energy and energy transition. With India emerging as a global leader in renewable energy expansion, the discussion will bring together senior figures from industry, finance, policy, civil society to identify concrete steps to further accelerate renewable energy development, strengthen grid and storage, and mobilize investment at scale. This engagement is part of the Secretary-General's continued efforts to advance faster, fair, and more inclusive global energy transition aligned with the Paris Agreement. On Sunday, from New Delhi, he will travel to Geneva in Switzerland, where on Monday he will deliver remarks at the opening of the 61st session of the Human Rights Council. Later on Monday, the Secretary-General will also address the high-level segment of the 2026 session of the Conference on Disarmament. While there, the Secretary-General will also hold bilateral meetings with leaders and ministers attending the opening of the Human Rights Council, as well as a meeting with groups of human rights non-governmental organizations. He's also scheduled to participate in an event hosted by the Vice President of the Swiss Federation, Ignacio Cassis, to mark the completion of the Portail des Nations building, a new visitor center for the UN compound in Geneva. The Secretary-General will be heading back to New York on Monday evening. And he is in New York because he just returned from Addis Ababa, whereas you will have seen on Saturday he spoke at the opening of the 39th session of the 39th African Union Ordinary Summit. He praised the UN's partnership with the African regional organizations, saying it has grown stronger over the past decade. Looking ahead, the Secretary-General added, we continue to have three major areas of focus in our work with African Union: peace, economic action, and climate action. He also renewed his call for reforms of the Security Council, saying the absence of a permanent seat for Africa is indefensible. Later in the day, the Secretary-General held a press conference and told reporters that Africa is navigating some of the world's hardest challenges and doing so with determination, creativity, and resilience. Turning to climate, he called on developed countries to triple adaptation finance, mobilize 1.3 trillion United States dollars a year by 2035, and increase contributions to the Loss and Damage Fund. With the right support, he said Africa will become a renewables powerhouse. Mr. Guterres added that the continent's critical minerals and resources will help create new industries and jobs, building value at home and not exporting value away. The plundering and exploitation of Africa's resources must end, he said. Throughout the day, the Secretary-General continued to hold bilateral meetings with leaders attending the summit, and you have seen multiple readouts issued over the weekend. Couple of senior appointments to share with you. Today, the Secretary-General announced the appointment of Awa Dabo of the Gambia as his Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights. She succeeds Nada al-Nashif of Jordan, to whom the Secretary-General and the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, are deeply grateful for her contribution to the organization. Ms. Awa Dabo has extensive experience in human rights, crisis recovery, peace building and prevention, humanitarian affairs and development. Ms. Dabo previously served as chief of the country's oversight and support for the UN Development Program's Regional Bureau for Africa. We're also announcing today the appointment by the Secretary-General of Claudia Fuentes Julio of Chile as Assistant Secretary-General for Human Rights and head of the UN Human Rights Office in New York. She will succeed Ilse Brands-Keris of Latvia, to whom the Secretary-General and Mr. Turk are both deeply grateful for contributions to the organization. Ms. Fuentes Julio, who's currently the permanent representative of Chile to the UN and other organizations in Geneva, brings more than 2 decades of experience in international relations, multilateral diplomacy, and human rights. Turning to the West Bank, the occupied West Bank, I can tell you that the Secretary-General condemns the Israeli government's decision on 15th February to resume land registrations procedures in Area C of the occupied West Bank. That follows a decision by the Israeli cabinet in May of last year. The decision could lead to the dispossession of Palestinians of their property and risks expanding Israeli control over land in the area. Such measures, including Israel's continued presence in the occupied Palestinian territory, are not only destabilizing, but as recalled by the International Court of Justice, illegal, unlawful. He calls on the Israeli government to immediately reverse these measures. He again warns that the current trajectory on the ground is eroding the prospects for the two-state solution. The Secretary-General reiterates that all Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the regime associated with them, have no legal validity and are in flagrant violations of international law and relevant United Nations resolutions. The Secretary-General calls on all parties to preserve the only path to lasting peace, and that is a negotiated two-state solution in line with relevant Security Council resolutions and international law. Turning to the situation on the ground in Gaza, our colleagues for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warned that humanitarian operations continue to face significant impediments. Shipments from Jordan are restricted to a route that requires multiple offloading and reloading points. Shipments from Egypt, Karim Shalom, Karim Abu Salam crossing face a high return rate, despite recent improvements between the 4th and the 10th of February. Less than 60% of consignments from Egypt could be offloaded at that crossing point. Inside Gaza, humanitarian movements that require coordination with Israeli authorities also continue to face obstacles. Of nearly 50 such movements coordinated between the 6th and the 11th of February, just only half were facilitated. 5 were denied outright and 11 were approved, but encountered significant delays and other impediments, including 2 that are only partially accomplished as a result. And just today, we had 2 more denials. Our teams on the ground are engaging with the authorities to clarify the constraints and seek a resolution so that our operations can move forward. In recent days, our colleagues leading on logistics supported the transportation of nearly 1,900 pallets full of food, shelter, health, water, and sanitation items from crossing points along the perimeter fence to destinations inside Gaza. Earlier today, Courtney Rattray, the Secretary-General Chef de Cabinet, delivered remarks on the SG's behalf at the opening of the session of the Special Committee on Decolonization. In the remarks he delivered, the Secretary-General said that our world has come a long way, with well over 100 nations gaining independence since 1945. Yet the legacy of colonialism has left profound scars through deeply rooted mechanisms of economic exploitation, as well as forms in the form of racism, inequality, persistent exclusion from decision-making bodies. The Secretary-General laid out 3 priorities for dealing with the 17 remaining non-self-governing territories. First, inclusive dialogue among non-self-governing territories, administrating powers, member states, and all other stakeholders. Second, the central role of youth. And third, the urgent needs for climate action. His full remarks were shared with you. And regarding Ukraine, our colleagues in Geneva, the International Organization for Migration, today noted that as Ukraine prepares to enter a 5th year since the full-scale Russian invasion on 24th February, ongoing attacks on energy infrastructures continue to strain living conditions for millions. According to new data from IOM, an estimated 325,000 Ukraine returnees could be displaced once again in the coming months, with more than 1/3 thinking of moving abroad again. Since 2022, IOM has delivered a large-scale nationwide response to the crisis in Ukraine, supporting up to 6.9 million people inside Ukraine, directly and indirectly, as well as millions across 11 neighboring countries. To prevent further displacement, IOM urges the international community to scale up winterization, housing repairs, livelihood support, and integrated mental health and psychosocial services, particularly in frontline and high return areas. And moving to this hemisphere, our colleagues at OCHA tell us that in Colombia last Friday, we, along with our partners in the government, launched a 2026 humanitarian needs and response plan. Colombia continues to face complex humanitarian crises marked by armed conflict, climate-related disaster, and migration flows. Humanitarian partners estimate that nearly 7 million people need humanitarian aid this year. That's roughly 1 in 8 Colombians. And our humanitarian colleagues also note that conflict between non-state armed groups and now present in 60% of Colombia's municipalities, mostly in rural areas, has resulted in forced displacement, confinement, and restrictions on people's mobility. Last year saw a 58% increase in attacks against civilians. That's what our partners are telling us. Climate emergencies such as the recent floods in Cordoba, which affect more than 150,000 people, also increase humanitarian needs. To respond to most pressing needs, the humanitarian community requires $287 million and aims to reach 1.2 million people. 2025 humanitarian operation received only 24% of the funds needed. 2 new resident coordinators to announce. Following host government approval, the Secretary-General appointed Amanda Kozi Mukwashi of Zambia as the new UN resident coordinator in Angola, and he also appointed Allegra Maria del Pilar Baiocchi of Italy as the new resident coordinator in Mexico. Both took up their posts on February 15th. Ms. Mukwashi is a global leader with over 30 years of experience in international development humanitarian work, while Ms. Baiocchi brings more than 25 years of experience in development, humanitarian, and strategic leadership notes. They will both guide UN country teams using their ability to bring people together to combine UN expertise and resource in support of nationally led efforts to advance sustainable goals. Biographies online. 2 countries paid up in full. We have a little quiz. Gabriel, paying attention? This country considers the number 17 to be unlucky. Italy. Brava. Do you know why? Okay. Do your 2 colleagues behind you know why? Okay. Okay, I'll tell you why. Because the number 17, when spelt in Roman numerals, can be rearranged to spell the word vixi, meaning I have lived, implying death. That's why 17 is unlucky in Italy. All right. This country is the 2nd flattest country in the world, behind the Maldives. Whew. Wow. Yes. Very good. It is also one of the very few places where the sea directly meets the desert sand dunes. So we say thank you, grazie to our friends in Rome, shukrans to our friends in Doha for having paid up in full. We're up to 68. Okay. Do you have a question or do you yield to someone else? Do you have a question? Okay, Namo, you need your microphone, you can ask a question.
Deputy Special Envoy for Syria yesterday asked about if he will meet with SDF and other the Kurdish officials in Syria when he's going, I think, in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Cordone is heading on Monday to Beirut, and then we expect him to cross into Syria soon after that. And of course, he will engage with all actors, political, government, and other civil society. Obviously, as his meetings happen, his office will share them with you. Yes, Pan, please. It's clearly a holiday today, huh?
Thank you. Happy holiday to all. Speaking of energy transition, I have 2 questions. One is that China has actively promoted green transition, and it has successfully achieved economic development while transition to green energy. So what's your perspective for China's green transition and its global significance?
Well, I mean, I think obviously China, as the world's second largest economy, has a critical role to play in energy transition, both at home and also encouraging others to go into an active, just transition, backed with the resources that are needed.
Okay, my second question concerns China's draft environmental code. China is making an environmental code, draft law actually, so that is aimed at coordinate the relationship between economic development and environmental protection. So can you give your perspective for this measure in promoting global environmental governance?
To be honest, I would give you a perspective if I knew more about what you were asking about. So I will look into it and respond. Yes, Gabriel, and then.
Thanks, Steph. A couple of questions. One is on, in your comments, you said that less than 60% of the consignments from Egypt could be offloaded at the crossing point inside Gaza. Can you be specific on who exactly is blocking that?
Well, I mean, the blockage comes from the issues with the Israeli authorities who are dealing with that side of the crossings.
And on your remarks on Israel and their intent on land registration in Area C, would the Secretary-General agree with many governments that have come out and called that de facto annexation?
Whether it's de facto annexation or not, it is driving us further away from a two-state solution, which may very well be the intent of those who are pushing that policy.
And in your comments, you mentioned how it's a violation of international law. I think you used those exact words.
Unlawful,
or close,
yeah.
Close to it.
Yeah.
Whether it be Israel killing UN staff members over the last couple of years in Gaza, bombing hospitals, violating the ceasefire, or in this case, the most recent case now of the land registration Area C, there appear to be no direct consequences for violations of international law over the last couple years. Does the Secretary-General agree with that? And what more can be done to add consequences?
If you listen to what the Secretary-General has said for quite some time, he has seen with great concern growing impunity for those who violate international law in many different parts of the world. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Stephane. I have a question with regard to the event that the Secretary-General is going to take part in New Delhi. Mm-hmm. What is his concrete expectations with regard to advancing the UN's agenda on AI?
Well, the aim is to ensure that the international community fully understands all the potential and the risks of AI, and that everyone has a seat at the table in terms of guiding policy, that it not just be left in the hands of a few governments or a few countries and a few companies. There are a lot of people who will be, all of us in a sense, our lives will be implicated by the development of AI, in which direction it goes. And there are many, many countries who will be impacted greatly and yet may not have a say. This is to ensure that everyone has a say. And decisions are based on facts and science. We'll go to Jesus from FA.
Hello. I would like to ask about the food crisis in Cuba, which keeps escalating. Is the Secretary-General worried about the situation in Cuba, especially regarding humanitarian needs?
Yes, the Secretary-General has been following the situation in Cuba extremely closely, and I can tell you that he's very concerned about the situation in Cuba, and which is worsening as oil needs continue to be unmet. As you know, the General Assembly has consistently called for an end to the embargo imposed by the United States on Cuba. The Secretary-General would like to see all parties pursue dialogue and respect for international law yet again. But our teams on the ground are working with the government to help support the humanitarian relief for the people of Cuba. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Steph. I have a question, one big question related to Palestine. First, Israel decided to allow only 10,000 Jerusalemites to enter the al-aqsa mosque during the month of Ramadan. That's part, if you have any comment on that. And second, yesterday, 11 Palestinians were killed in Gaza, and I haven't heard any comment on the death toll in Gaza. 3 of them were found this morning in the ruins. One of them is a child. And the village of Anata, which is next to Jerusalem, Israel decided to destroy 40 units in the village of Anata. And on the land registration, I want to correct Gabriel. It's related to area A and B.
Abdelhamid, you can correct Gabriel separately. What is your question?
Yeah, I know. The question on land registration and confiscating Palestinian land now in area A and B, would that make Israel clearly a settler colonial state or not?
Well, I will let you analyze the answer to that last question. We have been expressing our increasing concern at the various regulations and decisions that have been put into place by the Israeli government concerning settlement activity in the West Bank. I think we've been consistent in our message that it is unlawful, and that it is also obviously hindering any movement, any prospect of movement towards a two-state solution, which we continue to believe in. I had not personally heard about the destruction of the village outside of Jerusalem. On the mosque, we believe, as a matter of principle, people should be free to worship freely, and we continue to support the status quo in terms of the holy sites in Jerusalem. And as for Gaza, we consistently will continue to condemn the killing of innocent civilians. Okay, on that note, seeing no further questions, I will release you, and I will see you tomorrow.